Okay, so I thought I'd make a little video just showing some skills that kind of could be used in a similar way to the project that you're working on for the car rentals. So what I've got here is a spreadsheet, and I've just populated it with some bookings. So you can see that I'm trying to book out different classrooms, different IT rooms in the school. Each room, I'm saying, can be booked for a certain number of hours. So IT1, for example, was booked for 1 hour here. IT2 was booked for 2 hours. IT4 for 3 hours. IT5 2 hours, etc. For each room booking, we can also book a projector, and all I've done at the moment is stick a Y in there. The Y indicates that a projector was booked, and I'm just going to assume that if I'm booking a room for 1 hour, I'm also booking a projector for 1 hour. In this case, IT4 was booked for 3 hours, so the projector was also booked for 3 hours. I've got another tab here that has some costs. So different rooms, I'm saying, cost different amounts. So IT1, it's the largest of the IT rooms, so it costs £15 an hour. IT2 is £12 an hour, etc. And if I have a projector, then I'm going to be booking out for £3 per hour. So let's have a look at how we can start to gather some information here that we can use to calculate costs. Now, there are different ways of doing it. One of the easiest ways initially is to use a pivot table. So to do a pivot table, they're quite easy. You highlight the data, go to Insert, and click Pivot Table. What you can then do is select whether you want it to go into a new worksheet, so that will be a tab along the bottom, or into an existing worksheet. And I'm just going to build it into this worksheet for some simplicity here. So I'm going to say I want it to start, the titles I want to start on the top row, so that'll do fine. And I'm going to click OK. When I've clicked OK, you'll see that I get some tools to build the pivot table. And what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to select the information that I want. So I just want the room and the hours booked. Now, whenever you click off the pivot table, you can see the options go away. When I click back on the pivot table, the options come back. I could, if I wanted to, put the hours booked into some columns, and I can see that IT1 was booked for 1 hour twice, and IT1 was booked for 2 hours twice. The totals are still here along the side, 4 hours for IT1 in total. And if I look down the rows here, I can see that IT1 was booked there for 1 hour, IT1 was booked there for 1 hour, so that's 2 hours in total. IT1 was booked again for 2 hours there, so that's 4 hours in total. And I know this is working. What's particularly cool about a pivot table is, like, if I double click on a record, for example, if I double click on the 4, it will create a new tab for me and it will show me all of those bookings. But I don't need that for now, so I'm just going to click delete. Okay, I'm also going to just remove that column because I'm just interested in the totals for the moment. I'm just going to neaten this up a little bit, and let's center align those to make it a little bit easier to read. Now, once I've got that pivot table, I can start to do some calculations. So I've already got a cost here. Let's work out the total income. So I'm going to add a new total here. And I'm going to look at, for IT1, I want to return the cost. So I'm going to show you how you can build this formula a little bit. So I'm going to use what is called a VLOOKUP table. So I'm going to type in equals and VLOOKUP. And I'm going to look up this value. So you can see when I type in VLOOKUP, I've got some options. So it's asking me for the lookup value. So I'm going to look up this value and I'm going to press comma. It then asks me to look up the table array. Well, the table array is on the cost tab. So I'm going to highlight from IT1 down to IT6 and also include the pricing. Now, it's important to press F4 at this point because it will put the dollar signs in front of the A and the 2 and the B and the 6. That basically means lock those positions in place. I'm going to press comma again, and the column index I want to return is column 2 from this table because that's the price I want to return. So I'm going to press 2. Press comma again. And now it's asking me, do I want to do an approximate match or an exact match? Well, I don't have approximately different rooms. I have exactly different rooms. I have IT1, I have IT2. So I want it to be false. So I want it to be an exact match. So if I close the brackets now and press enter, you'll see that I get the price back for IT1. I'm going to put the price in with the little currency symbol, and I've got the price, £15. Now, why did I do the dollar signs? Why did I press F4? Because I'm just going to drag down. And when I drag down, what happens is the table for each formula stays the same. But what does change is the value that I'm looking up. I2 on the first one, I3 on the next one, I4 on the next one, and that relates to the column and the row. So by selecting the dollar signs there, I've locked it in place. It's always looking at the right table. If I didn't put those dollar signs in there, let's just get rid of these for the moment, and then I drag down, you'll see some unusual behavior. So here you'll see that the table in the table array is changing. And if I look at A6 to B10, it's looking up A6 to B10. And you can see that that doesn't actually have any information in it, only that bit. So it wouldn't work properly if I started adding in more columns. So I'm just going to return that back to a locked cell. We call that absolute cell referencing. So I'm going to press F4 now, and you can see the dollar signs have gone back in. And then I can drag this back down. So I've got the prices per room, but that's not the formula. I need to do the price per room times the number of hours. Well, that bit's easy now because I've got the first bit. I could just modify this formula and times it by the number of hours. So I'm going to press enter now. And now I've got my updated prices. So IT1 I've made £60, IT2 I've made £48, etc. I can then do a sum function here and find out the total income that I've made from the rooms. So £228. So that was easy. That was using a pivot table. And then my formula was a VLOOKUP to find the values that I want from this table. And then doing it using, so multiplying it by the number of hours I booked it for. Okay, so the question is, can I do it in a different way as well? And the answer to that question is yes, you can. So how can we do it? Because we now need to figure out, well, some rooms will have taken in extra income because of the projector. So let's think about how that would work. Now, you could do another pivot table for just looking at the projector. You could work out the costs if a projector was booked and for how many hours. You could do that and then add the totals together. That would be fine. But what if you wanted to know the total income for the projector and the room together? Well, let's make a few more columns in here just to create a bit of space and see what we can do. So let's put in a total here. Now, this is where we're going to use a combination of the VLOOKUPs, and we're going to use a combination of the hours and the projector, and we're going to end up with quite a long formula, but you should understand it as we go along. So we'll build it up and we'll go from there. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to look up using a VLOOKUP the price of this room, because then we're going to multiply it by the hours booked. So we're going to look up this value, comma, from the costs. Again, remember to turn it into an absolute cell reference by locking it in with F4. I'm going to return column 2, and remember we want an exact match, so it's false. So I'm going to just close that off and just check that it's worked, and it has worked. It says 15. Let's just turn that into a currency because we know we're going to be working in currencies. So now what we're going to do is we're going to multiply that value by the hours booked. Okay, so 1 hour for IT1 is £15. That's fine. I can check that it's working by dragging down, and it looks like it's working just fine. IT1 is £15. I've booked it for 2 hours and it's £30 there. That looks really good. I'm going to just remove those for the moment because there's a little bit more to do. We now need to work out the cost of the projector. Now we can do it in the same column. We can do total, room total. We can then do projector total. Okay, in a new field. I'm going to wrap the text so it just goes. So fits into the cell correctly. So what we want to do now is say, right, well, if this is a Y, that means we want to look up the price of the projector. So if we use an if statement here, if this is equal to a Y, what do we want it to do? So if this is the logical test, if D2 is equal to Y, what do we do if the value is true? Well, we can look up the cost of the projector, but we don't really have to do that. We can just go, let's make that cell equal to 3. So to £3, but it's on sheet costs in cell D2. And if it's not true, so if D2 doesn't have a Y in it, we'll just leave it blank. So we'll put 2 speech marks in there and close it off. So we can see that this has worked. We hide a projector and we have £3 in here. If I drag it down for the others, we can see that some of them are blank. Now, what's happened here? We can see that we've got an error. These seem to be showing a price, but nothing's in there, even though we did a projector. And that's because I forgot to make that an absolute cell reference. If you look, as I scrolled through these cells, you can see that D2 changes to D3, to D4, to D5, and there's nothing in D2, there's something in D2, but not in D3, D4, D5. So I just need to lock those in. So let's do that now. Highlight that cell, press F4, press enter. Now if I drag it down, we should have £3. So what do we do now? Well, we just need to know it's £3 per hour. So let's times it by that. So times the number of hours booked. And we drag it down. Now we've got some errors. So let's look at that. So what happens if I try to multiply a blank with a number? Doesn't work. So really what I should have done was change that to a 0. And now drag it down. And now we've got our prices. Let's drag this down. We have our prices. Now what we can do is our total, and it's just equal to the sum of those two things. And there we go. And once I've got my totals, I can work out the total sum for those. And I can also just drag that across. So I've got £210 in my room totals, £30 for my projector total. Added those two together, and I've got £240. So there you go. That's how you work out some totals using the data that you started with. So that was my starting data, and these are my new cells that I've added in. My question is, and I'm just going to try and figure out, is why my totals do not match up, because £210 for my room booking should match up with my grand total here. So I'm just going to work that out and we'll fix it. Okay, I realise what I've done. So my mistake again was with these absolute cell references. So remember, if it's got a $sign, it's going to lock it in. Now on my formula for my pivot table, I have got the VLOOKUP. So if I get rid of this bit, just to remind us what we did, my VLOOKUP looks up the price of the room, and then what I wanted to do was multiply it by the number of hours booked. So when I changed my formula and I typed in multiply by the hours booked, it automatically put $signs in front of those characters. So I'm just going to remove that, press enter, and now when I drag it down, this should have matched up, but it's K1, then K2, which is, oh, hang on, I messed that up as well. It's multiplied by that one. This one should be multiplied by this one. This one should be multiplied by this one. This one. I don't have to keep doing that, it's easy, but if I can just write IT5 here, that updates, and then that one could be IT6. There we go. So now 210 matches up with those two. So those were the two ways. So the pivot table is really good because it allows you to quickly generate the information you need, but the formula is a little bit more fiddly. This one here, I had to do the calculations manually. Again, it's just VLOOKUPs for the most part. This one had an if statement to just say, right, if this was true, display the price, otherwise set it to 0. And then I'm just using a sum value here to add up the sum of those two values. Now I didn't use sum on that one, I just added the two cells together, but you can do it the same with a sum as well if you want to be a little bit more professional about it, like that. So it's exactly the same. Okay, so there you go. I know that was a bit of a long video, but hopefully it gives you the skills you need to do some of your project work. Okay, take care.